My dear CEDEES family, so today we'll have a small discussion of, let's say, anti-thyroid drugs from the pharmacology point of view. Now, it's very important that when we think of pharmacology, we always think that we have to mug up those drugs, and there's no other way but to mug up. And somehow pharmacology looks like a very, very difficult subject because we are forced to mug up those huge jargon of words. I agree that pharmacology has a lot of drugs, the names of drugs, and let's say the classification seems huge sometimes, and you got to mug up those names. But if you really try to understand, like what these drugs are and how they exactly get into the system, then your understanding of the drugs become better. You will be able to capture those names very easily, and almost every system has got some background. Let's some kind of a background music to it. So when you go back, you read up about those drugs a little bit, try to understand the classifications better. Then you can understand the uses and indications and contraindications, everything so very nicely, right? So always have some brief attempt of reading. Very good books are available in the market. I think Govindra Garg and Sparsh Gupta is a very, very nice book for pharmacology. He's really condensed the matter very well. So I guess you can, like if you want to give some extra reading, besides what is there in your regular MCQ books, you can probably follow this book. It's a very, very fine book. Okay, now, so let's begin off with what we'll do now is we'll learn about anti-thyroid drugs. Before we go into anti-thyroid drugs, we should basically try to understand what is happening, right? So how we have T3 and T4, and if you remember our biochem classes, we know that these are all formed from an amino acid called tyrosine. So first we will try to understand how T3 and T4 is basically produced, and then we will try to understand the anti-thyroid drugs to be given, right? Now let us say that if you look into your thyroid, we have the follicular cells and we have the parafollicular cells. The follicular cells are what is responsible for the formation of T3 and T4, whereas your parafollicular cells are what is responsible for your calcitonin production. Now let us say, this is a small channel here, right? Iodine is being taken into your follicular cells. So this is taken with the help of what is called as your sodium iodine symporter. Okay, so there is a sodium iodine symporter through which your iodine is moving into your follicular cells. Once iodine has come into your follicular cells, the first step is that it undergoes oxidation. Okay, I just write here, it undergoes oxidation to form, like let's say it forms iodinium ions. There are various forms. One of the forms is iodinium ions. That's the first step, oxidation. Once it undergoes oxidation, it combines with your tyrosine, right? As we said, tyrosine, and it forms like monoiodotyrosine, or it also forms diiodotyrosine. Now this particular step of this formation of this MIT and DIT is what is called as organification. Okay, organification. And then the last step is what is called as coupling. Now in coupling, what happens? Let's say that two molecules of DIT come together. It's very simple. Two molecules of diiodotyrosine come together. It helps in the formation of T4. If one DIT, that is diiodotyrosine, combines with monoiodotyrosine, 2 plus 1, then it results in the formation of what is called as T3. Right? So you must have heard of T4 and T3. And ultimately now these are again stored back in the follicles, and whenever the TSH, under the stimulation of TSH, this T4 and T3 is then secreted off into your blood. This is what basically what happens, right? Now this whole stuff, oxidation, organification and coupling, the most important enzyme that is responsible is what is called as thyroid peroxidase, right? The enzyme responsible for all these three steps is thyroid peroxidase. Let's recap. Iodine comes in with the help of a sodium iodine symporter. It undergoes three steps: oxidation, organification, coupling, iodinium ion, MID, DIT, T4, T3, and then it is secreted away from your follicular cells. Suppose you want to give thyroxine. Patients who don't have, like for example, cretinism, mixed edema, then you can think of giving thyroxine. Now you have T4 and T3. T4 is produced in excess than T3. T4 has got a longer duration of action than T3. T3 is short-lived, but it's much, much more potent. But simply because of its long duration of action, we majorly tend to give T4. Otherwise, the patient compliance becomes a problem if you stick to T3. So most probably give levothyroxine. Is basically a form of T4. Now, that is about people who are suffering, who don't have thyroid hormones, and you want to give T4. Now let us majorly speak about antithyroid drugs. Suppose I want to give antithyroid drugs. There are 6 ways in which you can attack. You can block the formation of thyroid. Okay, T3 and T4. The first step is you do not want this iodine to be absorbed into the cell at all. So you want to block it there. That's the first step. First step itself, you would like to block it. This first step of sodium iodine symport can be blocked with the help of a few drugs called thiocyanate. He's the most important there, okay? And then you have perchlorate, pertechnate, and all these drugs. But the most important is thiocyanate. Right? Unfortunately, this group of drugs are highly toxic, a lot of adverse effects, and they have stopped using these drugs now. They don't use these drugs anymore. But you know your common vegetable cabbage, it has a lot of thiocyanate. And smoking also has, your smoke also contains thiocyanate. So anyway, that's the first step. The second step is what we learned is oxidation, organification, and coupling. So what you would like to do, you would like to block this enzyme. Which enzyme? Thyroid peroxidase enzyme. So the second thing is I want to block thyroid peroxidase enzyme, right? So for that you have a few drugs, most important being carbimazole, you have methimazole, and you have propyl thiouracil, right? Carbimazole, methimazole, PTU, that is propyl thiouracil. These groups of drugs are very, very important. But please understand, these group of drugs will block this formation of T4 and T3. Means new drugs, new T3 and T4 is blocked. But the T3 and T4 which is already stored in the follicles, they will continue to act. So there is a lag phase when you give these drugs to the patient. You cannot see the response immediately. You know, it takes around 1 to 3 weeks for you to really observe the actions of, let us say, PTU. A very important advantage of PTU is, especially in terms of pregnant ladies and in lactation, the favored, in fact, the drug of choice is propyl thiouracil, because the amount of placental transfer is very, very less with PTU rather than carbimazole and all is actually teratogenic, not to be given. One more adverse effect of this group of drugs is, most common adverse effect is it causes rashes, maculopapular rashes. And that's the most common adverse effect. PTU can cause hepatotoxicity, that is one problem. And one of their serious adverse effects, though it is reversible, is agranulocytosis. So you got to keep these points in mind when you're coming to thyroid peroxidase inhibitors. The third one is you want to block the secretion itself. You don't want it to come out. You want it to be stuck there. These group of drugs are called as thyroid constipating drugs. You want to just keep your T4 and T3 there. You want to block these entire secretion. And those group of drugs will then be called as, you have sodium iodide, you have potassium iodide, and the most common one, which I'm sure all of you have heard of, is your Lugol's iodine solution. All right, Lugol's iodine solution is a combination of 5% iodine and in 10% potassium iodide solution. So these drugs are the fastest antithyroid drugs. Sodium iodide, potassium iodide, Lugol's Lugol solution. The minute you apply it, the minute this is being taken up, what happens is it basically decreases the vascularity of your thyroid gland, and makes it, basically it shrinks your thyroid gland, and it basically constipates, does not allow your T3 and T4 to move out. So please remember these 3 drugs: sodium iodide, potassium iodide, and Lugol solution. This is the fastest acting antithyroid drugs. Right. The next one is, let us say that there is too much of thyroid being produced. You want to use it for a longer term. Then you can probably also think of radioactive iodine, or what is called as iodine 131. Okay, so this can be combined with a sodium salt taken orally. It is concentrated in your thyroid follicles, and slowly they start emitting your beta particles, which can then damage your follicular cells. The thing with this, we might think radioactive iodine, you take it now and immediately, the cells are being destroyed. Doesn't happen like that. It's very, very, it takes a long time. In fact, up to 3 months. So sometimes you might have to put the patient on drugs like PTU, and then probably think about giving, because it takes almost 3 months for the actions to be seen if you're giving radioactive iodine. The half-life of iodine 131 is roughly around 8 hours. Okay, so that is one thing. If you want to destroy your thyroid follicles, you can probably think about iodine 131 in cases of Graves' disease and toxic thyroid nodules and all that. Now, this is done. Next one is, suppose let us say Now, all of you, we have learned that the T3 is the one which is more potent, right? So the minute T4 and T3 is released, let's say it goes into your liver and kidney, in the liver and the kidney, the T4 is converted to T3. T4 is converted to T3, peripheral conversion takes place. This conversion takes place with the help of an enzyme called as deiodinase, 5-deiodinase. This is the enzyme which helps the conversion of T4 to T3, right? Especially in the liver and kidney. So suppose there are certain drugs which can be given, so you can block this enzyme. When you block this enzyme, the potent T3 is not produced. Okay, I hope you get that, right? Peripheral conversion. But there are also a few systems like your brain and pituitary. They don't depend on this enzyme. They can on their own convert T4 to T3. But the most important is your liver and kidney, where majority of the conversion is done. This takes place with the help of your 5-deiodinase, which can be blocked with a group, certain drugs for that. Like for example, you have amiodarone, you have propranolol, okay? And you have your PTU, you can have certain steroids. All of these prevent the peripheral conversion of T4 to T3. Just keep this in mind. Now, along with these drugs, you would like to give the patient, suppose I'm having Graves' disease or I'm, this excess of thyroid being produced, there are various symptoms which the patients will have, like for example, palpitations or anxiety, tremors, tachycardia. And then to block that, you can give certain drugs like beta blockers can be given, like again propranolol and your esmolol and all that. Certain calcium channel blockers can be given. All of these drugs can also be put as anti-thyroid drugs, though not anti-thyroid per se. If you're speaking of anti-thyroid per se, then you can speak of these first 4 group of drugs. That's it. You've learned all the drugs for anti-thyroid. Let me just revise. You want to block this sodium iodine import. The drugs are thiocyanates and perchlorates and pertechnates, not used, highly toxic. Thiocyanate is commonly seen in cabbage, right? Goitrogen, you must have heard of it. Then you want to block the thyroid peroxidase enzyme, which can block all these 3: oxidation, organification, coupling. You have a few drugs like methimazole, carbimazole, and propylthiouracil. Right? I've told you certain advantage and disadvantage of them. We'll do certain MCQs now, so it will fall into place. Third, you don't want to be sick. You don't want to push these T4 and T3 from the follicle, from the thyroid. You want to block it there. Thyroid constipating drugs. You give certain drugs like sodium iodide, potassium iodide, Lugol's iodine solution. You must sort of thyroid storm, right? If you've not brought the patient back to a euthyroid state, then immediately the patients will land up a thyroid storm. So Lugol's solution is used. If you want to destroy the follicles, so they cannot be stored there, then you can give iodine 131, half-life of around 8 hours, but the action takes time. So you should really plan, giving some other anti-thyroid drugs along with radioactive iodine, right? It's not immediate. It takes a long time for it to be produced. And beta particles. The next one, if you want to prevent the peripheral conversion of T4 to T3, because T3 is more potent, the action is seen immediately, especially happens in the liver and kidney. It takes part with the help of an enzyme called deiodinase. You want to block this entirely. You can give certain drugs like propranolol, propylthiouracil, amiodarone, certain steroids can also be given. If you want to block the other effects of Graves' disease and all that, symptoms, like as I've said, like anxiety or tremors or tachycardia, you can probably give certain drugs like beta blockers and calcium channel blockers. Now you have some idea of the various groups of anti-thyroid drugs. Now what we'll do is we'll solve a few MCQs, right? We'll have a few slides and we will try to, I'll just give you one second, and then you try to arrive at the answer. First question, the drug of choice for the treatment of thyrotoxicosis during pregnancy. No doubt, right? Anybody who have probably heard this for 5 minutes can immediately tell that the answer is, let's look at the answer. It's propylthiouracil, right? Because the amount of placental transfer is very, very less. Most of these drugs are teratogenic, propylthiouracil, your carbimazole, methimazole, but the amount of placental transfer is less. The best to go for is propylthiouracil. We'll go to the next slide. Which antithyroid crosses placenta? I think it's straight, both of them. Right? Let's see the answer. Both of them can cross your placenta. Let's look at the next question. Mechanism of action of propylthiouracil. Now once you've understood PTU, you know what it does. Right? So does it prevent the synthesis of thyroglobulin? Does it prevent your iodine trapping? Iodine trapping right over there. Does it prevent the release of T4 and T3? Right. So okay. So what is the answer for this? Let's see. The best one is it prevents coupling. Basically, any of these three steps: oxidation, organification, or coupling, is basically blocked by your thyroid peroxidase. You blocking thyroid peroxidase enzyme, and propylthiouracil is one of the drugs for that. The best answer here is coupling. Next, plasma half-life of carbimazole. Right. This is an objective question. It's roughly around 8 hours. Okay. Next question. Propylthiouracil is very less, roughly around 2 hours or something. Next one. All of these are potentially the serious side effects of thionamide group. Thionamide group is nothing but your methimazole, carbimazole, and propylthiouracil group. This group here, thyroid peroxidase blockers, are what is also called as a thionamide group, except we have spoken about agranulocytosis. I told you it causes. Propylthiouracil is a hepatotoxic. And the most common adverse effect is a maculopapular rash. So all of them are there with the exception of anaphylaxis, right? Right. Answer for this? Anaphylaxis, right? Next question. A female on carbimazole therapy presents with sudden fever, rigors, sore throat, right? Now carbimazole and all that, you should think of one potential adverse effect, serious adverse effect is agranulocytosis, right? When there's sudden fever, rivers and sore throat and the patient is on drugs like carbimazole, the first thing you must think of is a complete blood count, right? Let's see the answer. Mainly to just rule out agranulocytosis and aplastic anemia. Okay, next one. All of them inhibit the peripheral conversion of T4 to T3 except this particular step wherein we have mentioned that there is a 5-deiodinase is the enzyme that is responsible for the conversion. So propylthiouracil, methimazole, propranolol, amiodarone, I think I have given all the examples. Right. So the answer for this is methimazole. A direct straight question if you know the theory. Next. Drug which inhibits the conversion of T4 to T3, which just blocks the conversion of T4 to T3. You have carbimazole, methimazole, propylthiouracil and Lugols. Again, it's straightforward. If you just heard this 10 minutes lecture, I think it's very clear. Next one, propylthiouracil. Next question. Fastest acting, we have learned that the fastest acting is that which basically blocks the T4, T3 from going out, isn't it? So the best answer here would be, let's see the answer, potassium iodide, sodium iodide, potassium iodide, Lugol solution. All of these are the fastest acting anti-thyroid drugs. Right. They have certain adverse effects like angioedema and all that. You've got to be a little careful. Lugol's iodine contains, this is a straightforward question. The answer is A, it's 5% iodine with 10% potassium iodide. Okay. In the treatment of papillary carcinoma, you're giving radioactive iodine, that's iodine 131. The question is, it destroys the neoplastic cells predominantly by, though X-rays and beta rays are all produced, the most common is your beta particles, right? So keep that in mind. Okay, the answer for this is your beta rays. Okay, next. The half-life of iodine 131, I think we have already discussed. The answer for this is around 8 days. Okay, next question. Beta blockers used in a thyroid storm would cause, right? The beta blockers, I've told you, they're used only for symptomatic relief, right? So would cause, if you look at all of the options, increased metabolism of thyroxine, no. Blockade of thyroxine receptors, no. They're only used for a quick relief of symptoms. As I've told you, patients come down with tremor or tachycardia or anxiety and palpitations, and then of course the answer for that is a quick relief of symptoms, right? Done. I think we have gone through, yes, we've gone through most of it. So please do keep this in mind. Go through antithyroid drugs, and as you read up a little bit more, I think these concepts, what we have discussed today, will stay in mind and will really, really help you all. Okay? I wish this lecture was helpful for all of you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.